Well, the highlights of the discussion today, it was just so useful to have architects and developers and different types of developers sitting around the table to discuss, obviously one fairly focused topic of residential in particular. And it was just really interesting to hear what issues are coming up, where trends are heading, what different things people are dealing with. And so very useful kind of roundtable discussion. Well, I think what was interesting about that kind of looking to the past is the inherent flexibility of some of the housing stock of Georgian, Victorian and Edwardian Britain, and talking about ceiling heights and adaptability and flexibility of homes beyond their first use. So I think that was probably what we were looking back at, but we're seeing some of those trends coming through in housing now, where we're leaving out ceilings, having exposed soffits, having exposed services, so that actually people can benefit from that additional height above their heads, which of course also, as exactly in this room demonstrates, also allows more daylight in for a sense of well-being, because people's personal space and feeling of well-being within their home is obviously of critical importance. Oh, sustainability is absolutely critical. It always has been at the heart of our practice for 33 years. Even Lloyd's, when it was designed, had a triple glazed ventilated facade, which has reduced its running costs of a typically equivalent building of over 30% of the operational costs. But every project we do, the sustainability is right from square one. It's not something that we see as a bolt-on afterwards. We have a scheme now. How do we make it sustainable? We work from first principles always. And the biggest and the most prolific savings and moves that you can make actually can happen in the very early design stages, in feasibility and concept, the positioning of buildings, allowing more daylight and sunlight into spaces, reducing artificial lighting, and of course then that rattles all the way through in terms of the systems you choose, the levels of insulation, orientation, all very critical to a contemporary design. Well, of course, the fixtures and fittings are important from the point of view of if you think about walking around a typical kitchen, and the things you touch are the countertop and the handles. And actually, the carcasses and things like that can be relatively straightforward, but if the pieces that you touch feel nice and feel of a certain quality, then you have a feeling of quality. But of course that changes whether you're doing market housing or whether there's always different kind of price brackets, but it's about getting that to the right level, but also making sure that those materials are well built and robust and will last the test of time. Of course, the debate about what do they call it, privately operated public space, is one that rages on, and the fact that some people in some neighbourhoods actually feel safer because they know there's security in place is an interesting one. I hadn't heard that before, particularly about Wembley, but of course I think that's very valid, and there was also talk about the feedback of people living in some of the smaller units of what they felt was important about those units, and things like sustainability and sourcing and material passports for projects are really high on the agenda, because I think finally the environmental crisis and all of those issues that we've been seeing really come to the forefront in the last 6 months are really sticking in people's psyche. Well, it's a really nice way to have a discussion, to meet some people kind of within the industry, but with a different view of the industry, and maybe learn something in a very kind of relaxed environment. So I think it's lovely.